St. Andrews by the Sea, on the south shore of New Brunswick. Picture postcard Canada. It's a jewel for the tourists, but the town can't rely on ladies buying china. This is the Maritimes, and it runs on fish. The biggest employer in St. Andrews is Star-Kissed Tuna. 400 jobs, the only tuna packing plant in Canada. Under its own labels, Star-Kissed, Ocean Made, By the Sea, and with tuna packed for a dozen other companies, this Star-Kissed plant puts out 40% of the canned tuna sold in Canada. But it's under pressure. The fish have to be brought in from far away, West Africa and the Orient, and it's there that more and more tuna is being canned. For all the competitive pressure from low-wage countries, Fiji, Thailand, Taiwan, Star-Kissed has some advantages too. It's still the world's largest packer of quality tuna. The name means a lot, and so does the backing of its parent, H.J. Heinz, the American ketchup people. But perhaps most important for the product from this plant is that little stamp on the cans, Product of Canada. A lot of people are willing to pay extra for that assurance of quality. Every last can of tuna marked Product of Canada, whatever the brand name, comes out of this plant. But 2 years ago, Star-Kissed ran into problems. Fisheries inspectors were rejecting more and more of the Star-Kissed tuna because the quality didn't measure up to Canada's exacting standards. Random samplings showed tuna of inferior quality, rancid and decomposed, classed unfit for human consumption. This outraged Star-Kissed. It accused the inspectors of being arbitrary and capricious, then frivolous and whimsical. By last November, $250,000 worth of rejected tuna had piled up. A problem so serious that the new fisheries minister, John Fraser, met the Star-Kissed people on a trip to New Brunswick.
They opened 3 tins of tuna for me and said, I didn't know what this was all about, but taste it. I tasted 3 tins of tuna. 2 seemed pretty good. They said, your inspectors have rejected this. So I sat down, well, what's this all about?
It was about the decisions made here, the fisheries lab at nearby Black's Harbor. After determining that the tuna is safe to eat, nothing poisonous, the inspectors look at whether it's fit to eat. And that means measuring up to Canada's standards for quality, whether the tuna's packed here or imported from abroad. Bruce Jackson, one of the 300 trained fisheries inspectors across Canada, is just like an experienced wine taster. Sniffing and chewing the tuna, hour after hour, he looks for taint and decomposition.
Well, taint, generally you think of taint, it's usually rancidity, which is caused by oxidation. This oxidation can take part in the freezers, the fish being freezer burn, fish being stored too long or at improper temperatures.
What does decomposed mean in your business?
Well, decomposition is a breakdown of the fish. Maybe it's occurred shortly after it was caught. It wasn't handled properly. It was held at elevated temperatures for too long. It may occur after it's come into the processing plant.
So it's the same as if I buy a piece of fish in the fish market and say, look, this is off. It smells bad, the flesh is soft.
Texture enters into it, color, odor, flavors.
It's off.
Yes.
We work very closely with the Department of Fisheries.
Mike Hunter of Vancouver is president of the BC Council of Fisheries, and his salmon packing companies account for 80% of Canada's fish canning.
We feel very strongly that the departmental inspection service is extremely important to us.
So it's in your interest to have tough inspection?
Absolutely.
But back in New Brunswick, Star-Kissed turned hostile and challenged the government on whether the quality of some of its tuna really made it unfit for human consumption. First, Star-Kissed declared the fish was definitely safe to eat. After 2 hours in these pressure cookers, it's safe, nothing poisonous. But fisheries countered that rancid and decomposed fish can still turn your stomach, and that alone makes it unfit for human consumption. It was a can of imported tuna, not Star-Kissed. Safe enough to eat, but rancid and decomposed.
before this fish was canned or put into the can, it was decomposed, it had spoiled, it had rotted on the production line.
Why doesn't it? Can I smell it? But you're just doing that from the look of it. I can see how mushy it is.
Do you care to try some of it, or?
It's your job. Next, StarKist attacked the standards. Too vague, too subjective, unrealistic. But the minister himself, John Fraser, said they were exactly the same as in the U.S. and suggested StarKist start buying better fish. Indeed, the rejections, at times running as high as 80% of the samples tested, covered only specific batches of fish. Overall, through the year, total rejections came closer to 2 or 3% of production. Third, StarKist blamed the inspectors, calling them less than expert and impossible to please. The company suggested one inspector turned on StarKist because he didn't like a can of tuna his wife had cooked for supper. But that view of inspectors doesn't wash in BC.
What protection is there in the system for a company if perhaps they feel one inspector is out to get them or is being too niggly?
Well, there is an appeal procedure. If your product fails on inspection for whatever reason, you can ask for a reinspection of that product. And the reinspection is done with more than just one inspector. There is a panel of people who look at the product. So I think the chances of that kind of thing happening are very, very slim. And to my knowledge, even the problem of one man having a down on a company just does not exist.
The fisheries inspection is considered fair by your members?
Yes, fair and needed.
StarKist did appeal, and when it lost, complained that the system seemed rigged. And furthermore, it suspected some inspectors not only do not like tuna, but may not like any fish, period. Apart from minimum government standards, StarKist then proposed leaving questions of quality up to the consumer, not inspectors. People like it and want it, so it meets the quality definition, the company claimed. It's time the Fisheries Department understood the real world. Now StarKist was getting tough. The plant would close. Our patience is wearing thin, StarKist threatened, and someone in Ottawa is going to be more than embarrassed if the cannery closes. So there it was, 400 jobs at stake, and StarKist president Albert Cropley complaining that his warehouse bulged with more than $500,000 worth of rejected tuna. Some went into cat food, but the bulk of it was offered to Ethiopia. Canada's famine relief coordinator, David MacDonald, turned it down, telling StarKist, "It is wrong to offer to others food that we have condemned as unfit for human consumption."
StarKist had tried everything. It had begged, pleaded, appealed, and was even threatening to close the plant. It had attacked the standards, attacked the inspectors, attacked even the very idea of inspection for quality. Still, the Fisheries Department wasn't satisfied with the product coming out the other end of the plant. So the company recruited some friends, first the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce, then the New Brunswick Fish Packers Association. Both of them contacted Federal Fisheries Minister John Fraser on behalf of StarKist.
It was on to the politicians in Fredericton, and even the Premier of New Brunswick himself. Richard Hatfield took no chances with 400 jobs. Through the New Brunswick government, everyone met, and Hatfield's people came up with a plan. The fish that had been rejected by 2 levels of professional inspectors within the Fisheries Department would be tested once and for all by a neutral research agency here in Fredericton. The Research and Productivity Council, RPC, is a provincial crown corporation which did some lab tests and assembled a man-in-the-street type of panel from its own staff to taste the fish. Food research is a small part of RPC, but it had worked for StarKist before, has helped develop some famous products, and also tested baby food for the StarKist parent, H.J. Heinz. Bill Bryden, the head of New Brunswick's Job Protection Branch, paid RPC $35,000 for the testing. RPC was hired to be impartial, but Bryden made his objectives clear: save the company and the jobs of its employees. The Premier himself talked to Fraser on the telephone and then relayed the company's demands. StarKist would stay open only if Ottawa accepted two fundamental principles. First, the inventory re-inspected by RPC will be released upon their recommendation. And second, there will be a change in inspection procedures. So there was the saw.
For whatever reason, John Fraser set up yet another review committee, this one reporting to him. Fraser selected 4 food experts from Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and they set out to work in March and April. When they reported, they came down solidly on the side of the Fisheries Service on the questions of taint and decomposition.
Now Fraser had 4 different reports. 2 levels of experts in his own department, plus his own Blue Ribbon Review Committee agreed. All 3 said unfit for human consumption. But the agency hired by New Brunswick, RPC, went the other way, saying most of the fish was okay. And what did Fraser do?
I took the position that there could have been error here, or that perhaps they were being too severe, and I gave that benefit of the doubt to the company.
April 29th, John Fraser exercised his power, and Richard Hatfield was among the first to know. Certain products in dispute at StarKist were released by me in accordance with the powers set out in the Fish Inspection Act. In reaching my decision, I took into account the repeated expressions of interest and advice expressed by your government, by StarKist management, and by an independent review committee which looked into this matter. So the trucks moved out. $600,000 to $800,000 worth of tuna, about 1 million cans that had been declared unfit for Ethiopia because of taint and decomposition, were on their way to stores in Canada.
What is the issue here? Is the issue the $600,000 to $800,000 worth of tuna, or the integrity of an institution, the whole inspection system?
No, the issue here is whether in this country, if a citizen thinks that an official is operating unfairly or obtusely or inaccurately or in some other way that is inappropriate, can the citizen go to anybody in the political system and get a hearing? That's the first issue. The second issue is whether when a minister gets such a request to review something, the minister acts just on whimsy or caprice, or goes and gets whatever is available in terms of an independent assessment. Now, that is exactly what I did. I have no apology to anybody.
Minister, nobody disputes your right to seek outside advice. You set up your own review panel. What I have trouble understanding is why, then, you didn't take its advice. It agreed with your inspectors.
I'm not at all sure that you're placing the right interpretation on the sum total of information in the 2 independent appraisals. If what you're saying is that one of the independent appraisals said, don't sell the stuff in Canada.
The one that you commissioned. The one
That's
that you
right.
commissioned.
I can't.
Not the one that New Brunswick commissioned.
Well, what do you want me to do with a recommendation like that? Seriously take the position that if it's good enough for Americans or Englishmen or Dutchmen or Africans to eat, it's not good enough for Canadians to eat?
Or decide it's not good enough for anyone to eat.
Well, but that's not what the panel said. The panel said that it is good enough for most of the people in the world to eat. But 25 million Canadians ought not to have it sold to them. And it never went so far as to say that it shouldn't be sold to Canadians. It said we would recommend it be sold outside Canada.
Well, that's not quite what Fraser's committee members had in mind. If StarKist could get the fish past foreign inspectors and sell it somewhere else, go ahead and try, but only with a cautionary label to show it was not approved in Canada.
What would you say to anyone who might hold the opinion that, in fact, you, responsible for the Fisheries Inspection Service, knuckled under to the provincial premier, responsible for maintaining the jobs?
I would say that that's an allegation. If they're prepared to say it in the street, I'll sue them, because it isn't true. And what's more, it's not fair.
Why not?
Because it didn't happen. I didn't knuckle under to anybody. I had a citizen come to me with a complaint. I then sought advice to guide my decision. Now, what else is a minister supposed to do? I didn't make the decision on the basis of a telephone conversation. I didn't make the decision on the basis of just the complaint. I went and got some other people to look at it.
It seems to me if you rely on the outside people, your own inspection branch must be redundant then. If you disagreed with their decision, you should probably fire those people or get rid of that branch. How can it indicate anything other than lack of confidence?
Look, you don't fire people because there is a disagreement on a judgment call. This is what I said yesterday to someone. I said, look, I love you dearly. Don't be upset just because somebody disagreed with your judgment on something. Go back and keep up the good work.
Some of the big customers rely on that good work. For soldiers, lobster is a real treat, but they go through a lot of tuna. The Defense Department bought $100,000 of it from StarKist. The cooks opened it and ordered the cans out of their kitchens. They reported a strong smell, tuna oozing out of the tins, fish that was not recognizable as tuna. It was quarantined and sent to the Fisheries Department, which declared it unfit for human consumption. A replacement batch arrived, and it too was declared unfit.
What should people do who buy this fish and don't like it?
Well, if they don't like it, they don't have to buy any more of it.
What do you tell the Department of National Defense, which bought a lot of it and doesn't like it?
Well, they have every right not to like it. I'm not interfering with what the Department of National Defense accepts or doesn't accept.
Fish, they
It doesn't matter to me.
Fish, they say, that's oozing out of the tin that's not recognizable as tuna?
Well, now, just a minute. If you've got a complaint about a tin of tuna, take it to the person that made it. Now, if your allegation is colorful...
I'm not making any allegation. I'm reporting what people at Defense say about the fish that they bought.
Well, all right, but they've rejected it, haven't they? What am I supposed to do about it?
Like John Fraser, I'm no expert at sniffing or tasting, but I do like fish, and I've eaten plenty of tuna. These cans were all product that was rejected by the fisheries inspection people. And to me, they all smell strong, and none of them look very appealing, particularly these two, which are really quite mushy. But to me, the least appealing of all is this one. It seems, in my opinion at least, to be quite soupy, and like the others, it smells strong. This particular can was made January the 4th, about the time that the plant was having the most difficulty with inspectors. And this one I picked up off the shelf last week in a supermarket in Toronto.
The spokesman for the huge salmon industry in BC, Mike Hunter, finds the whole episode unique.
From your experience here, do your plants ever get a 30 to 40% rejection rate?
Never.
From your experience, do any of your plants or has the government ever gone to an outside agency to look at the quality of fish after it's been rejected by the department?
Not that I'm aware of, Eric.
Do you have any experience where a minister has overruled the professionals in the fisheries service and put product on the market that was rejected by them?
No, not in this industry.
What's the effect on the industry in Canada if word gets out that politics is playing a role in this kind of judgment?
Well, if that is happening, I think it's extremely unfortunate, and we would be concerned about it. And I think the first thing we would stress to the consumer is that canned salmon made in British Columbia is not involved. That the integrity of the inspection system in the canned salmon industry, as far as I'm concerned, remains world-class, and we have no interference of that kind here.
Political interference?
No political interference.
Just a minute. How can anybody say that it is political interference for a premier of a province to phone a federal department minister and say, look, there's a problem down here, will you look into it? Isn't that what the premier got elected to do? Isn't that what I got elected to do? I mean, this isn't political interference. That's just the ordinary way you try to run a country.